Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So want to go ahead, do a little bit of a follow-up on a topic and a conversation that we have certainly had quite a bit here on the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel over the last couple months, and that is the recruitment of this gentleman right here. Yeah, I'm talking about AJ Dybantsa, okay? If you follow this recruitment, if you follow this channel, you don't need me to tell you who AJ Dybantsa is. 6'8", #1 high school player in America. Listen, we throw around the term generational talent way too often in this world, but I mean, he is just a special high school player. And I bring it up because the recruitment has been kind of interesting. He obviously took all 7 of his official visits in the fall. There was some speculation, probably late October, early November. Could he be on the verge of committing? It does not happen. And it actually got pretty quiet over the last couple weeks. And you kind of wondered, like, what's going on? Why is it so quiet? What do we need to know? What are we missing? Well, I bring it up because over the last couple weeks, last couple days, we have certainly gotten quite a few interesting updates. I think the most important update that we need to get to, and then we'll kind of contextualize it, tell you what it means. Well, it is that AJ Dybantsa has officially cut his list from 7 down to 4. That was announced on Wednesday, as he has officially cut his list down to 4 schools: BYU, Alabama, Kansas, North Carolina, meaning that he has eliminated Baylor. He has eliminated also Auburn. He has eliminated Kansas State as well. And it looks like, it appears as though we are coming down the home stretch on this recruitment. And we got to talk about the list cutting, but we got to talk about a couple interesting other developments as well. So first of all, look, AJ Dybantsa, as I said, you don't need me to tell you what kind of player he is, what kind of prospect he is. But the one thing that does stand out, besides the obvious, 6'8", crazy athletic, crazy skilled, is really 2 things. One, plays both ends of the court. We've talked about that since the summer. I love the effort, the energy, the intensity that he plays with. I don't think there's any doubt. Like there are a lot of guys that skate by on ability alone. He is not one of them. He matches the ability with the intensity. So that is something that you love. I would also say this. I think the other thing that stands out to me is that he keeps getting better, even though he was identified early on in his recruitment as one of the stars of this class. I mean, think about 2 summers ago, after his freshman year, before he reclassified, he was the leading scorer in the Nike EYBL 17 and under circuit. So like the highest level, playing against players that were 2 years older than him. Remember, this is no disrespect intended. It's just a fact. But Cooper Flagg was playing a level down that year. The Boozer twins were playing a level down. AJ Dybantsa, who at the time was a year below them in high school, Cooper Flagg reclassified. He then reclassified. But I bring it up because AJ Dybantsa was playing a level above those guys as a year younger than them. So he's been a star since his freshman year. It hasn't slowed down. He's only gotten better. There's a lot of other good players in this class. I don't want to just diminish them and everything that they've accomplished, but he is the clear #1, getting better. And you can see why not only all these colleges like him, but obviously the NBA is interested in him long-term as well. Really quickly, in terms of the list cutting, I think 2 things are very interesting to me. First, from the perspective of teams that are not on the list, and then the teams that are on the list. In terms of who's not on the list, I'll be transparent. Baylor and Auburn, not a surprise they didn't make the final cut. I had been told, even though Auburn was one of the early visits, I think the family really likes Bruce Pearl and that staff. I was told they weren't going to be a factor down the home stretch. And I think Baylor was really kind of eliminated shortly thereafter the visit. Just think that both sides decided that it wasn't the best fit. Everybody moved on. Doesn't mean the player's bad. Doesn't mean the program's bad. Whatever. But I bring it up because one thing that I was a little bit surprised by was the fact that Kansas State was eliminated from that list. And what's interesting, I know I said it on one of these updates. I don't know if I ever tweeted it or talked about it otherwise. I was actually told that for all the talk about AJ Dybantsa and NIL and how much is he going to get paid and all this and all that, I was actually told that the highest NIL bid that came in for AJ Dybantsa was actually from Kansas State. Now, there's obviously no real way to confirm it, but I had heard that from multiple people. I then saw other people kind of put it out there. I forget who reported it or whatever. But Kansas State, what I will say, they have as much NIL money as anybody in college basketball. And if it wasn't the highest bid overall, they're not going to get outbid either. So if somebody's offering this much money, they can match it. If somebody's offering that much money, they can do the same. So I was a little surprised. I think that kind of makes it worth noting that, heck, you know what? What's kind of interesting about that is, again, that everyone talks about NIL. I think it's a very important factor in AJ's recruitment. I don't think it's the main one, though. I think that probably unofficially confirms it. Now, in terms of the new information, let's dive in, because obviously I am one of many people. I've said from the beginning that I thought BYU, coming out of really Peach Jam and mid-July, late July, into August, into the start of the school year, I said I really kind of thought BYU was probably the favorite. I still think they're right there. But what I will say is that I think I've maybe underestimated a little bit the impact that Alabama is going to have in this recruitment, okay? Alabama, it's a couple things worth noting here, and this is where some of the new information comes in. First off, this isn't new information, but Preston Murphy, Alabama's lead recruiter, has a relationship with the Dybantsa family. You go back to Preston Murphy was out of college basketball for a few years, coaching AAU. My understanding is built a real relationship with that family. It has carried over. And so, one, you have the lead recruiter at Alabama, leading the charge here, that has a personal relationship with the Dybantsa family. Now, why that's especially interesting, Preston Murphy's a bulldog, man. He is one of the best recruiters in all of college basketball. And I don't want to undersell what some of the other staffs are doing or what some of the other guys on that staff do, because it's a great staff across the board. But remember, Preston Murphy comes in. He was the key recruiter in the Cliff Omoyori recruitment over the summer. Omoyori was the transfer from Rutgers. For a while, it looked like maybe North Carolina was going to win that one. No. Alabama won it. They obviously have 2 McDonald's All-Americans on this year's roster, with both Darian Reed and Aiden Sherrill. And so I just bring it up because this is a great recruiter who has a real relationship with this kid. But why it's worth noting, have you noticed where AJ Dybantsa's dad has been over the last couple weeks? First off, the dad did go, to some of the Alabama games in Vegas over the last couple days. Now, part of it, I'm sure it's a hop, skip, and a jump from Utah over to Vegas. I mean, I've never done the flight, but I'm guessing it's probably an hour flight. So he has a relationship with the staff. He has a relationship with that whole ecosystem. And so he went to watch Alabama play. Now, why that to me is worth noting, besides the obvious, is the fact that what is the one thing that the Dybantsa family has been very consistent about in this recruitment? NIL is going to play a factor, but it's really, how are you getting my son ready for the NBA? Well, it's hard to argue. I mean, listen, Kansas has a lot of great players in the NBA. North Carolina has a lot of great players in the NBA. What you can't deny, though, is Nate Oates has done a pretty good job in a short amount of time. Brandon Miller, number 2 pick in the draft, is balling. Herb Jones. I can't remember everybody off of Alabama that's in the NBA right now, but they have a ton of guys that are in the league playing at a high level. They play an NBA style. And so I think that makes an impact, and I think it matters. And I think it's really starting to show in just how the clear mutual respect between the staff and the family. Also worth noting, by the way, the dad, Ace Dybantsa, was actually at the North Carolina Alabama game on Wednesday night in Chapel Hill. Now, maybe it means nothing, and maybe it means that he was there to see just a good basketball game, or maybe it means that North Carolina has a little bit more juice. But to me, I actually think this is more about Alabama than it is about North Carolina. And so it's clear that at the very least, Alabama is not giving up. They're not playing second fiddle to anybody. And so I'll be fascinated to see what happens over the next couple weeks. Now, I'll say this in terms of the remainder of the recruitment. One, listen, I mean, I know the original plan was to commit in February. If you're cutting your list down to 4, if you've taken your visits, you kind of know. Now, I do think it's worth noting, the family did say, hey, we want to watch everybody play during the season, just to kind of see how they play, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's probably a reason why they have not yet committed. Now, I've seen some people, I disagree with this. Oh, well, BYU, they've lost a couple games. They're not living up to their end of the bargain. They're not playing the way they said. I don't buy that at all. I watched the entire Ole Miss game. Game went into overtime. They easily could have won that game. I've actually been impressed by BYU. I like that team a lot. Not just Yegor Demon, but Buchanan Catchings has had his moments. Richie Saunders has had his moments. Bosco, the big kid who came over from overseas late, has had his moments as well. So one, I think that's part of the reason. But two, as far as the recruitment is concerned, this is where I really think it stands. I really think right now, first off, I think you can probably eliminate North Carolina. Listen, this is no knock. But listen, somebody's got to come in not first place. And I think North Carolina is probably one of the schools that's going to be the case for. Bottom line is, one, they've lost out on a lot of recruits during this 2025 cycle. Braylon Mullins, who committed to UConn, Jasper Johnson, who committed to Kentucky. They lost on a lot of guys in the portal last offseason as well. And what I've been told, I think a lot of their NIL resources right now are going towards actually football. Because remember, they're doing a football coaching search as we speak. As I got ready to record this, I saw that Bill Belichick apparently interviewed for the North Carolina head coaching job. So I'm not saying Bill Belichick's a candidate, but clearly whoever they're going to hire, they want it to be, they want to hire a good coach. They're going to have to pay a lot of money in salary. I know we're headed towards revenue sharing in football, but you're still going to need NIL money. You're still going to have NIL money. And I think most of their resources right now are tied up in football. Kansas to me is the total wild card, because the one thing about Bill Self, how do I say this delicately? He's come from behind in quite a few recruitments. Okay. Now there's some where he's always been in the lead. Darren Peterson a few months ago, but like there's been plenty where they weren't even in the mix, and then all of a sudden they are, and then all of a sudden they get their guy. I remember Flory Badunga, who's a freshman at Kansas this year. It was like Kansas wasn't even really being talked about, and it was, I think, Cincinnati at the time, and I know Auburn was in the mix, and then it was like, boom, 2 days before, it's like, oh, Kansas is there. Kansas gets the commitment. So, I never count out Bill Self in any recruitment. It's kind of worth noting they have a veteran team. So financially, some of the finances will be not as tied up next year if Hunter Dickinson's gone, DeJuan Harris is gone, etc. But I do think it's going to come down to a BYU versus Alabama thing. Now, I've been consistent. I would still say that BYU is the leader. But I think what stands out, and I think what's important in this case, this isn't just a BYU thing. It's not just an Alabama thing. When you're perceived to be a leader, the longer a recruitment goes, the less good it is for you, obviously, right? I mean, you pick any recruitment ever. It's just if it feels like it's done in July or August, and then it goes to September, October, November, all of a sudden you're like, well, crap, what the heck's going on? Is somebody else making a move? Is somebody going to get the guy? Whatever. So if you're a BYU fan, I would say get this thing wrapped up as quickly as you can. Because, you want this kid committed, obviously, signed whenever he can sign. But it's an interesting deal. I think the Bama stuff, I don't want to say it's emerged out of nowhere, but like I said, I think they're a little bit more of a factor. I'd still say BYU's in the lead, but I think that gap is a little bit smaller than I thought. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We've surpassed 47,000 subscribers. That number is insane to me. So I appreciate everybody's support. Also, we have our Torres on BYU. We also have a Torres on Bama page if you're a Bama or BYU fan watching this video.